Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. This is the place where you're entitled to Brad's opinion. And now for your host, Brad Allard.
Hello, everybody. Another hot week. Everybody's excited on Facebook because they got a little rain, I suppose. Taylor, you get any rain yesterday?
Yes, I did. It was beautiful.
I got maybe 5 minutes worth. I got enough to get the concrete wet, and that was about it. It wasn't like this big storm, but I guess it's better than nothing. At least it wasn't boiling hot, but it's just, everybody's talking, it rained, Well, that's great. Anyway, it now we'll see you again, the rain, probably in October. I don't know. I'll be glad when this heat wave is over, but I already looked at the weather for this weekend. We'll have a couple of days under 100 and then right back to 104 by the weekend, by Labor Day. So there you are. Anyways, I'm off to a rambling start for the week. Today I'm going to talk about an interesting thing that happened to me on Saturday. My lunch with my new best friend, Tom Daschle, the former Senate Majority Leader, and how that all came about. And also, I'm going to talk about the Republican debate. I watched as much of it as I could stand, but I do have comments, and I got a couple of clips, and it's interesting the difference between what the GOP pollers said who won and who the media said who won. So we'll talk about that as well. But anyway, let's go ahead and run the first round of ads here, and then we'll get right to my buddy Tom. All right, thank you to CrossFit Burleson, 317 Southwest Wilshire. I hope you're keeping cool in this weather. They got plans, they got programs, they got classes, they got membership deals. So check out CrossFitBurleson.com to find out what they could do for you. It's cheap and local, and they do a very good job. So CrossFit Burleson 317. Also, Shandy is working hard selling houses. I know the market slowed down for a lot of places in this country, but Burleson area still has a market, and she's working it. There's no doubt about that. And she knows her stuff. She's been doing this actually since she was in college, so she's no newcomer to the real estate industry. And you need somebody that has experience, has gone through the ups and downs of the markets and the rates and all that routine. So the Stogsdill Group will help you through all of that. So give her a holler if you're looking to buy or sell into this area. Okay, I need to share some of this stuff while I'm doing it. Also, thank you to Otto over at our place as always. It's a great place to go and have lunch and or breakfast. I go there so often I feel like I'm a piece of the furniture practically, but it's what I like about it is when I walk in there, I know the people there that are working the restaurant. I know people that are dining there. It's a very much a hometown atmosphere. So thank you to Otto for all he does and not just for the great restaurant, but also his commitment to our community. Thank you also to another committed community member. That'd be Chris Notaboom over at Wild Cigar and Culture. They're open right now. In fact, they open up early that humidor. So if you want to go there and buy cigars or a gift card or some kind of other cigar related material, you can do all of that. Also, if you like a decent drink we can actually hear yourself think, it's a good place to do it. Also, thank you to Tiffany over at Local Life. She's got the magazine coming out. I don't know if it's going to be out Friday, even though it is the first, but it'll be out next week, definitely. And it goes to 30,000 homes and businesses. And so you want to be part of that. So if you want to advertise with Tiffany, give her a holler because you'll get your name out quite a bit. And also a young man is getting his name out is Cody O'Brien over at Burleson Buzz. He's writing articles right now about what's going on in the city council, with the school board, with the Elks Spartans football game. He's replicating what the hometown newspaper used to be. So give Burleson Buzz a look, subscribe. It's very cheap, and so it's really worth your time. So I hope to have him on the show sometime, but he actually works for a living right now, so let's see if we can bump up his subscription levels. Okay, back to my friend Tom. How did that ever happen? On Saturday, get my days right. On Saturday, I went to a funeral luncheon. Now, I had known that the person that we were honoring with the funeral that day was related to Tom Daschle in some way. The woman that we were honoring was for lack of a better phrase, my son's grandmother-in-law. Okay, the grandmother of his significant other, and they, you know, Hayden, my son, is part of that family very much so, and he and the grandmother were actually pretty close. My own grandmother and uh, on both sides, and same with my wife. They passed away long ago, and so she kind of helped with that. But anyway, uh, his significant other's mother is first cousins with Tom Dashiell's wife, and they're very close. Okay, and so he comes in, and I found this out later. I thought they were kidding me actually, but I did get this confirmed that my son's mother-in-law, if you will, warned him, so to speak, that this guy with a beard is going to maybe come and try to talk policy with you and all this other stuff. Now, she was kidding about that. I really had no plans on shaking him down or anything like that. But anyway, we're sitting at the restaurant in Azel. There's a Mexican food joint over there off the highway, and there was an open chair in front of me, and he took it. And apparently that was by his own choice. He could have sat with other family, but he was interested in talking policy. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is pretty cool. Now, if you're not familiar who Tom Daschle is, he used to be the Senate Majority Leader. Taylor, how old were you when 9/11 happened?
I was 11.
11. See, and I was teaching class. Tom Daschle was a Senate Majority Leader from South Dakota when 9/11 happened. So he had a role in playing the policy that we took in dealing with Afghanistan and whatnot. So he was there on the ground level as it happened. Okay. Now, we didn't talk about that too much. Why? Because he was very, very interested in what I and two other people sitting near him. One was a butcher for HEB, and his daughter, who was a social worker, and I, as a former teacher, he was very interested about Texas education policy or social welfare policy and a grocery related business like inflation, how has it impacted your business, and on and on. And we had a very nice conversation for about an hour. He asked almost all the questions. He really didn't venture much opinion. He did have a couple that were not particularly, bomb throwing opinions. He's concerned about what's going on in the country and in terms of the politics and the division between red and blue. And he also thought maybe the Republican Party he was familiar with back in his day has been kind of moved to the right because of Donald Trump and things of that nature. But he wasn't, he wasn't there to give his opinion, but he talked and asked questions. And it was a very nice lunch. He was very gracious. I really felt like he was listening. Now, people will say, well, that's just a politician for you. I don't know. He seemed genuine to me. He seemed like a very nice man, and we had a really great time. And he was fully aware that probably most of that audience at the table were probably Republicans, but there was nothing even remotely like that brought up. And so when we talked about Texas education, for example, and my concerns as an educator, talked about Texas social welfare policies, and he talked to the young lady to my left about it. Talked about inflation with the guy from HEB. He talked about also about what we consider to be the best city and the worst city to live in, and talked about the differences between Dallas and Fort Worth, and he asked some cultural questions. Is there a difference between Austin and Dallas and Fort Worth? And indeed there is. And he asked, which city would you least like to live in? And all three of us said Austin, because of the traffic, because of the extremely high rent, and et cetera, et cetera. And we also talked about homelessness and high prices for same thing. I very much appreciate it. That was that. Taylor, you still getting me? I just got a message that said I might be off air. Am I still going on strong here?
You're on it. Blip for a second there, but you're still going.
Okay. What's the deal with this joint anyway? I tell you, my internet
Gotta love
over
the
here this
internet.
week. Well, it's been really spotty this week for some reason. not just for this, but for just general use. But I'm still dishing it out, huh? Okay. Anyway, last Wednesday, I don't know how many of y'all saw the debate. I was just kind of watching it in and out at best. Had it on the background. It's not like I was sitting there taking notes and all this other stuff and had my popcorn and junk. I would just had it on the background. I was doing a little reading, doing little chores, whatever. So I got the gist of it because, these debates, they're not useless by any means, but they hopefully will tell you what really, not so much what their policies are, but really how they are able to present their policies. And that's what I took away from. Some were really good at it, some not so good at it. There was one that came out, I think, in this debate that showed the backbone and the intellect that would make me really give this candidate consideration. But let's watch the first clip. I think this is the ABC version of the news.
In the U.S. tonight, the race for the White House and the first Republican primary debate overnight. The fireworks on stage with Donald Trump not there. 8 candidates taking aim at each other. Nearly all of them saying they would support Donald Trump even if convicted, if he's the nominee. Rachel Scott is there.
Even though Donald Trump was not in the debate hall, the frontrunner's presence loomed large.
If former President Trump is convicted in a court of law, would you still support him as your party's choice? Please raise your hand if you would.
Then former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie speaking up.
Someone's got to stop normalizing this conduct. Okay? Now whether or not you believe that the criminal charges are right or wrong, the conduct is beneath the office of President of the United States.
Defending Trump at every turn, biotech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy.
President Trump, I believe, was the best president of the 21st century. It's a fact.
The 38-year-old multimillionaire from Ohio on his biggest stage yet.
So first, let me just address a question that is on everybody's mind at home tonight. Who the heck is this skinny guy with a funny last name?
But Ramaswamy's opponents not holding back.
I've had enough already tonight of a guy who sounds like ChatGPT standing up here. And the last person in one of these debates, Brett, who stood in the middle of the stage and said, "What's a skinny guy with an odd last name doing up here?" was Barack Obama, and I'm afraid we're dealing with the same type of amateur.
Now is not the time for on-the-job training.
And after Ramaswamy said he would not support increased funding for Ukraine.
You have no foreign policy experience, and it shows.
And you know what? The foreign policy experience that
Working to stay out of the line of fire, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Do you believe in human behavior is causing climate change? Raise your hand if you do.
Look, we're not school children. Let's have the debate. I mean, I'm happy to take it to start.
DeSantis reluctant to take on Trump. Mike Pence pushing him to say whether the vice president did the right thing on January 6th.
I think the American people deserve to know whether everyone on this stage agrees that I kept my oath to the Constitution that day. There's no more important duty. So answer the question.
I've answered this before.
So yes.
Why are we? Mike did his duty. I got no beef with him. But here's the thing: is this what we're going to be focusing on?
Rachel Scott was there in Milwaukee for the debate. She was in the spin room afterwards. She's now traveled to Iowa. Life on the campaign trail. Rachel, the candidates were asked whether former Vice President Mike Pence did the right thing on January 6th, and nearly all of them answered the same way.
Yes, David. Senator Tim Scott said Pence absolutely did the right thing on January 6th. Former Governors Chris Christie, Nikki Haley saying that Pence deserves credit for standing up for the Constitution that day. Most of the candidates defending Pence, but few were willing to go after the former president for his actions on January 6th. Ramaswamy saying flat out he would pardon Trump if convicted. David.
Rachel Scott, thank you as always.
Hi, everyone. George.
All right, there we go. Well, I hope you got that clip in. I got a couple of texts during the showing it was kind of choppy on their end, but I hope at least the audio came through, if nothing else. But anyway, here's a few impressions I had about that whole debate. First of all, Well, I'm just gonna go down the list. I have them all listed here in no particular order. Okay, it's not like this is the order I would place them in terms of who won, who lost. That was for a lot of other people to decide. But as far as Mr. Ramaswamy, I have to ask, why is he running? He's 38 years old. The only candidate of a major party younger than that was William Jennings Bryan of the Democrats in 1896. Okay, so he and Jennings Bryan, for all his youth and whatever, had spent at least 6 years in the U.S. Congress. Ramaswamy has zero political experience, and people say we don't want politicians. We don't want career politicians. Well, there's not. There's not. What can I say? There's not. It's not a bad thing to have political experience. I would like to have an experienced leader of the political process. Running a business is not the same thing as running the government, and vice versa. People say, I want to run this government like a business. That doesn't happen either. Okay. Because you're dealing with a situation when you're running a business and you're the CEO, you're going to get whatever you decide done, maybe slowly, maybe with, a lot of bureaucratic inertia, but it's going to happen. Whereas in the political process, you're going to have political opposition to whatever you're trying to do. And you need to be able to deal with that political opposition. You need to be able to persuade and convince, where when you're a CEO, when you run the company, you don't persuade or convince anybody because you have the power of their employment over it. So the point I would make with all of this is that being an experienced politician is not a bad thing to have. Second, when I think about it, I'd ask Mr. Ramaswamy, and this is what George Will asked in his column about it. If you think Donald Trump is the greatest president of the 21st century, why are you running? You should be out there supporting him, not opposing him for the nomination. Why are you running in the first place? It's like if I thought that this president was the greatest president of all time, I would be putting the yard signs out or something like that, not running to keep him from running for a second term, which is what, in effect, Mr. Ramaswamy is doing. So that's the question I would ask him. What is his purpose in running if he thinks that Donald Trump is such a great president? Now, as far as his, smiling and, attitude and personality and all that, that's great. That's fine. My bet is we're going to be seeing Mr. Ramaswamy again, 2028 or beyond. And certainly at age 38, he's got, 2 to 3 decades. Anyway, that's the way it goes. But also, I'm getting another text here. I'm pixelated. Taylor, can that be fixed, or just is my bandwidth
I think
not
it's
so
just your
good?
internet connection. I just checked my internet speed and it's super fast. So
Yeah. Okay. Well,
sorry.
No, like I said, I've been having internet problems all week. Actually, slow downloads and things like that. So we'll just do the best we can. As long as the audio is good, they'll be all right. All right. Second of all, Nikki Haley. Now, what's interesting to me, this is who I thought won the debate, and I wasn't alone in that. When I left the debate on, and I was thinking about this show and all this, I thought, I really like what she did. And turns out so did a lot of the media. I looked at the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, National Review, and all 4 of them chose Nikki Haley as the winner of the debate. Okay, they had a lot of comments about it. They really thought that it was real, genuine. For one thing, when you're talking about I'm sorry. When we're talking about like Ramaswamy here, I'm going to quote from David Brooks, but he said basically it was all performative show. Ramaswamy seems as uninterested in actually governing as his idol. And so he just thought, he was just there to provide what Brooks calls temporary populist dopamine. And so the point about all of that is that the Ramaswamy was seen basically just as a game show host almost, and just as a substitute for Trump. Whereas, so in the comments about Haley, I'll quote Brooks again, Haley dismantled Ramaswamy on foreign policy. It was not only her contemptuous put down, you had no foreign policy experience, and it shows, which you saw in the clip. She took on the whole America First ethos. It sounds good in a one-liner, but doesn't work when you're governing a superpower. Gesturing to Ramaswamy, she said, he He wants to hand Ukraine to Russia. He wants to let China eat Taiwan. He wants to go and stop funding Israel. You don't do that to friends. So I'm just saying she took on some of the Trump stances on these things and said they won't work. They're not good for us and not good for the country. Over on the Washington Post, Kathleen Parker, who is she's another liberal columnist. Hardly. Brooks is moderate at best. Parker's kind of leans to the right, and she basically said that she won on brains and experience, as in her headline there, that she refused to basically go along with what the crowd wanted to hear or what maybe GOP voters wanted to hear. She basically was going to be she was talking about what she knew to be true. For example, what came up also was this national abortion ban for 15 weeks across the country. That's a topic for another day, but I think she recognized the political futility of that, because basically you'd have to have 60 votes in the Senate to overcome any kind of filibuster, and that is not going to happen. There's no conceivable way the Republicans are going to have 60 plus senators after the next election. So that's not going to happen, and she said so. And she also brought up, even if it could, there are a lot of issues involved with imposing a nationwide ban of the way that's being discussed. And so she talked to us like adults. That's again the headline in the in the National Review article, that she talked to them like adults. That that we're not going to be so fragile that we'll break apart because somebody said something that we don't agree with or never really considered. She also brought up the fact that most people don't want a Biden-Trump rematch, and that's been shown over and over by the polls. There's not even a doubt in that question. It's like mid-60s to mid-70s based on the various polls. Please don't have a Trump-Biden rematch. And so she said the loud part, the quiet part out loud, as they say, because she said that the American people don't want this. And she also made it pretty clear she thinks that Trump will not win if running against Mr. Biden. Now, some people will deny that and all that, and they'll point to this poll or that poll, and I could point to these other polls or just say the opposite. So that's not right. A question we can answer right now, obviously. But the point is that she said that part, whereas all the others, except for Chris Christie, were very muted in their critique of Mr. Trump. So my point about Ms. Haley and all of this is that she talked to the voters like adult people, that they're not fragile, they're not going to break apart, that she's going to say what she thinks is the right thing. Now, you may not agree that what she's saying is the right thing, but at least at least you're not getting some sort of pablum or some sort of one-liners or whatever, smirking jokes from Ramaswamy or just platitudes like you got from Pence or whatever. So I would prefer have a candidate that says what he or she means, and then I can evaluate that, as opposed to I wonder what she's really going to say. I do have a favorite in this race, but I think in my opinion, Ms. Haley probably was the most adult on that stage, and at least the most willing to take on the section of Republican voters that are committed to Donald Trump and say to them things they don't often hear. A third one I'd bring up something similar would be Chris Christie. Now, Christie has made his whole campaign an anti-Trump campaign. Basically, he's been the most vocal in his criticisms on almost every platform he's used, including this one. And I give him some credit. You saw on the clip that he basically said we can't continue to normalize Mr. Trump's behavior. Which does Chris Christie have any chance of winning anything? It's not likely. But I think he is the only one, other than Miss Haley is not maybe as quite as forceful, you might say, but and she did raise her hand. So if convicted in a court to support him as the nominee, the two did not with Christie and Asa Hutchinson. But Christie made it very, very clear about of Mr. Trump. He made it very clear that he thinks he's unfit for office, that his conduct is beneath the conduct of a president. And seriously, how can you argue with that? I mean, name calling and mass conspiracy theories and dominating Twitter or Truth Social or whatever else, and his personal conduct and instead of I don't know. Now we've already talked on the show about is Mr. Trump being pursued or unfairly prosecuted by the Department of Justice. There's a lot, and what I would say about that is yes, but he also gave them the material to work with. There was an article in the National Review about 2 weeks ago who said, "Is Mr. Trump being unfairly prosecuted? Is Mr. Trump guilty?" And the author Andrew McCarthy, who is very well respected in those circles, said yes, he gave them the sword to try to execute him with, not in a metaphorical sense, of course. Backtrack here. Also, Tim Scott. Now, Tim Scott, I've said on the show, I really like. I think he's a very, very decent man. Did he distinguish himself in the debate? He basically was Tim Scott. He didn't tell me anything I didn't know about him already. But see, maybe for others who don't know much about him, that was good enough. But I like Tim Scott because I think he's a quality human being, and character does matter. Okay, character does matter when you're talking about the leader of the United States government. I think we've seen in this century too many examples of lack of character existing in our White House. I don't mean just the last resident or the current resident, or I'm just saying without character in the White House. We've seen this for 30 years. In fact, you're going to have what's going on. That also applies to Congress. If you don't have character in those positions, you're going to have real problems. And I think we've experienced all of those things. But Tim Scott, to me, he showed who he was. It is not anything I wasn't aware of, so to speak. I knew he was this kind of man. I knew his conservative credentials. I was disappointed that he raised his hand along with Miss Haley. That's the only two marks I have against those two in their performances. But there you go. Okay, as far as the rest of them, and I'm going to run the second run of ads here, and we're going to show another clip, and then we'll finish the other candidates as well. So, as far as my little BNI crew of ads, first of all, we have Southern Jim, who is gearing up for the holiday season. I know it sounds crazy. It's boiling hot. It's August 28th. You don't buy jewelry the day before Christmas unless you're desperate or you forgot or whatever. She's going to be gearing up for the next couple of months because a lot of these purchases you have to think out ahead of time. So she'll be on the show in a couple of months, in fact, to talk about her Christmas plans and whatnot. So Southern Jim at the bottom of the Windmiller building at the first floor, right next to American Revelry, and they'll be open this week at their usual times. As far as Labor Day, I believe Saturdays they're taking off, and they're off every Monday. So there you go. Southern Jim, fine jewelry and gemstones. Also, thank you to our friends at Old Pro Roofing and John Williams, 817-734-2756. Now, I'll have John on tomorrow. It'll be a studio show tomorrow. Hopefully everything works out. Old Pro Roofing is a local. It works one of their inspectors and whatnot. Very good job. And and I'm having on the show tomorrow because when you talk about roofing and all this other stuff, it's one of those things you don't think about until you have to think about it. And when you have to think about it, you better bring your wallet. And he can find ways to help you save money. Okay. It's worth an inspection just to find out, yes, my roof needs repair or it doesn't. And when we had all that problems back in June, he checked mine out and he said, you're good, which I'm glad. So Old Pro Roofing, come drop by tomorrow. The show will be at noon. And so we'll talk to you then. Also, thank you to Texas Farm Bureau, Melissa Harmon, 682-804-0534. She and John work together quite a bit, and she'll also tell you about the importance of roof inspections, whatever else. I would bet the majority of her property and whatnot issues, shall we say, when she deals with, when you call for an insurance agent, almost half of them or more deal with roofing. And so it works out pretty well that they're both in our BNI group. So Texas Farm Bureau, a lot of great comments on this show been made by other Texas Farm Bureau clients. So give her a holler if you're looking to upgrade your insurance. Also, thank you to our friends over at Stop Restoration, Morris and Lisa Smith. They also work together with John and Melissa. And the Stop Restoration people check out if you do have some sort of environmental damage or whatnot, or even if it's just a leaky water pipe somewhere, or the leaky toilet, leaky water, hot water heater that causes problems that you may not even be aware of, and then come check it out. They can do a mold inspection. But if you do have some sort of weather-related catastrophe, storm damage, whatever, water damage, they can take care of that. Fire damage, they can take care of that. So, and they're very, very good at their job. So give Lisa and Morris a call if you're in need of their services. And our friend Candy Gow over at UMortgage, who was on last Thursday, and we're talking about rates. It was a really good show because I'm reading more about rates, and they're saying the long-term rates may stick there for a while. Even if the Fed slows down or stops raising rates, the long-term rates may be higher for quite some time. And you need to talk to somebody that knows what they're talking about. So Candy at 817-925-2661 can help you with that over at UMortgage. They're local here in town. They're over in the B&G buildings, the south end one that stands alone, third floor. And so you could go visit with her and her partner, Sammy Jo Campbell, and they'll tell you about what can happen with the mortgage situations. Okay. I'm not sure we have any nonprofit stuff going on this weekend on Labor Day, but there you are. Okay. Let's move on. The front runner, Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis, I think, was put up as an anti-Trump or the Trump alternative back in the day, when he started running, and his numbers have sagged a bit. Now, I'll put this in perspective. To predict the winner of Iowa or predict the winner of the nomination as a whole right now would be kind of a waste of time. The people look at the Trump numbers and say, well, he's in like Flynn. Well, they were saying the same thing back in 2007, right prior to the 2008 nominating processes. The hot name at that time was Rudy Giuliani, and they thought he had a real great chance. And the name that was falling through the cracks in the floor was John McCain. What's the problem with McCain's campaign? Why can't he get it together? Yada, yada, yada. Well, he ends up obviously winning the nomination. Plus, everybody puts so much emphasis on Iowa that Iowa is not really the best test case about how somebody is going to do, because there are a lot of people that come in first or second in Iowa that flame out within a month. I remember 1988, the number 2 guy was Pat Robertson, the CBN guy. All right. Pat Buchanan, it was the winner against H.W. Bush. Well, obviously those didn't make it. Rick Santorum in 2012. All these guys won Iowa and then didn't do much after that. The only candidate I saw that really took Iowa all the way to the finish line from beginning was Obama in 2008. And it brings up another point. If you would have asked at this time, prior to the Iowa caucuses, who was going to win, it'd be Hillary Clinton. There wasn't going to be any debate about that at all. Who ever heard of Barack Obama? I mean, he was barely known, but ends up winning the thing in a major upset. He survives New Hampshire, and then boom, it's off to the races. And there's other candidates, Jeb Bush, Scott Walker, that at this time were the names being bandied about, and they all crashed. So I'm just saying that really right now it's so nebulous. Now, maybe Trump's presence changes some of that, but it's so nebulous. You really honestly don't know. So let's go back to DeSantis. He did fine in the debate. Most people said it was fine. He said what he said. They talk about his lack of charisma or lack of personality or whatever you want to, that he's very awkward with people in one-on-one settings, or like when he's shaking hands at the Iowa chicken dinners or at the diners or whatever else, that he comes across as a bit fake or artificial. And that's wonderful. That's they're critiquing him personally and his personality. Even though I just said it's foolish to predict, I'm going to be a fool and predict a couple of things. I really don't know how DeSantis is going to pull this off, because if he got to a one-on-one with Trump, it's not going to be pretty for DeSantis, because he's not going to be able to do the kind of campaigning that Trump will do and pull it off. And so anyway, but he is dropping in the polls. Now, what's interesting is they took a poll of GOP voters in the room and all this at this debate, and he actually came out number one. So at least people that watched it from getting in said he did the best in this informal poll. Now take that for what it's worth. I mean, you're talking about people that followed it. I bet they said the ratings for this were the best they've had in like 12 years or something like that, since 16 maybe. But as far as how many people actually watched it, I think it was about 12 million. So who knows? As far as Mike Pence, Kathleen Parker of the Post called him, looked like a Presbyterian elder. And he, again, he didn't say or do anything that he had to be embarrassed about or whatever else, or had to backtrack. It was pretty standard stuff. He is defending his conduct on January 6th. I think that's amazing that we have to actually have that defense being made. I think it's amazing that we have to have that kind of conduct, so to speak, to be defended, where he refused to violate the Constitution. Pence is probably, politically speaking, one of the most conservative in the entire bunch. I do believe he has the character to be president. I just think that the people are going to they'll either hold his vice presidency against him and not vote for him, or they'll hold the fact he would not disallow the electors and hold that against him. So I think Pence, he may not think he's doing this, but I think he's running to validate his reputation. Now, as far as the other two, Asa Hutchinson, Doug Burgum, thanks for playing. That's about all I got to say. Burgum has some spectacular eyebrows. I will give him that. Asa Hutchinson was a former governor of Arkansas, and he's anti-Trump, but Hutchinson and Burgum are polling less than 1%, and so they'll be among the first that'll drop out. Not all these people will be on the ballot in Iowa, and there's some that didn't make the cut. Like Will Hurd didn't get enough donors to, individual donors to make the cut. Now I haven't seen him drop his candidacy. Larry Elder, same thing. He announced and hasn't done much since, but he didn't get enough individual donors, so he wasn't invited, which I think is a good thing, to tell you the truth. The debates we had with the Democrats last election in 20 were ridiculous. And same thing with 16. We had like 17 Republicans. There's got to be a way to shimmy down the field a little bit and the party needs to take a better control over that. As far as Mr. Trump himself, he's showing well over 50%, listen to me, 50 cent. He's showing over 50% in every poll, with the exception of Iowa and New Hampshire, which I think is unusual. He's in the mid 40s on those two individual states, but nationally he's well over 50%. Is that going to change? I don't think so. It's 4 indictments haven't dented him at all. In fact, they boosted him. And now we can talk about the indictments individually or collectively as it's a farce or it's necessary, whatever. My personal opinion is that tax business up in New York is a joke. The January 6th one, I think, is important that some people be held accountable, but I've read a lot about that case, and that Jack Smith fellow is making some pretty long shot charges based on some laws that are about 150 years old. But I think it's worthy of being litigated. Same with the Georgia case. I think that's worthy of being litigated. And same with the documents case, which I think, in my opinion, is, of all of them, that's the one that probably should be the most serious to the American people. And I think it probably has the most evidence to support the case against Mr. Trump. And so there you go. But is Mr. Trump going to win the nomination? At this point, yes. But that's this point. Things can happen. Some of these candidates could catch fire. I don't think anything Trump is going to do is going to cost him the nomination, because what else can he do? And so there you are. I mean, he literally has done so much that would have disqualified just about every other human being in this country from running for office, and he's leading in the polls. And I've talked to people that are committed to Trump, and I'm like, don't these things bother you? And they're like, well, for their response is one of two things. They think it's all a scam by the Department of Justice, or they think that more serious crimes have been committed by the Biden administration that are not getting the scrutiny. And third one is they say, well, yeah, we know what kind of guy he is, but when he was president, we didn't have all these problems at the border. We didn't have these problems with foreign policy as much. You know, he got government off businesses back. So the people that support Trump, there's some people that support Trump on a policy basis, not just a personality in your face kind of campaign basis, but they said, you know, I've said several people said, yeah, we know he's his personal life is kind of scummy and he cut a few corners and he probably is guilty of a couple of these things, but it's better than having the government breathing down your neck, you know, Biden getting on your gas stoves or your ceiling fans. I read something today that one of his health czars wants to limit beer consumption to 2 beers a week. What now? And is that going to happen? No, but that's the kind of thinking that goes on there. Is that 2 beers a week? I don't know. That's what Canada is. I don't know if it's mandating it, but it's their, that's what their guidelines are, and that they're trying to get bars to enforce it. As far as you know, other things like that, you look at some of the stuff that Biden's doing in the business sector, it's killing it. And this push on electric vehicles, sorry, Taylor, but they're going about it too fast. And it's costing a lot of people their jobs. And it also involves us with foreign situations, you know, because we can't get all the materials we need for those batteries. That needs to be rectified, but you know, going full steam ahead. And so that's what they see in Donald Trump, is that they see that he's going to take care of these problems that the Biden administration has not been able to do it. My opinion is several of these other people could do the same thing. All right, several of these other people could do what Trump, in policy wise, you look at Trump's policies in his 4 years, and he took his name out of it. And there's a couple of things that may not have been the traditional Republican response to things, but a lot of them were. You know, if you didn't know it was Donald Trump doing it, you wouldn't see a tremendous difference between him and, say, the Bushes in policy. There's all this other crap we had to deal with. Some of it bogus, like that Russian connection. That was all bogus. But as far as policy, that's why they support Donald Trump in some cases. But they also like the fact that he tells the Democrats to, you know, eat dirt and die or whatever, you know, he doesn't, and he's fighting the system and things of that nature. And they want that in a president. Now, to kind of sum all this up, nobody on that debate stage did anything to damage themselves. Nobody on that debate stage did anything that was really out of the norm. I'll reiterate, I think Nikki Haley probably was the most forceful and most willing to take on the others in policy terms and their support for Trump. I think Chris Christie really didn't talk a whole lot about policy, but he talked a lot about Trump and the others on that stage. Ramaswamy, again, why are you running? You know, is this a vanity exercise or what? I don't know. So anyway, I hope this helps. Did we see the NBC clip, Taylor?
No.
No, it's forget it. My bandwidth is making it look all wonky. So they got the gist from the first one. Like I said, tomorrow I'll be with John Williams, Old Pro Roofing. Thursday, I was going to have a guest, but my guest was Lisa Schwartz, but she's going to be moving her daughter to her new home, and so they're packing and all this, and so she had to postpone till the next month. I'll be talking about China then, so because I've been doing some reading about that, and it's very, very serious, not just for them, but for us as well. So I'll see you tomorrow. Stay cool. Today's the first day of classes at Hill College, so I'll be off and running, you know, indoctrinating a new set of students, so to speak. And I'll see y'all tomorrow.